In this video, we continue our way through the portion of our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, that really explains in detail many of the financial matters that we encounter in our lives on a regular basis. So Chapter 15 focuses on college planning and the four main options available to you to help with college costs. Now, you certainly don't need me to tell you that obtaining a college education in America has become staggeringly expensive. The average cost of a four-year degree is over $100,000 for most public universities these days, and nearing $225,000 total at private universities. Certainly, those rising college education costs require a much more rigorous cost-benefit analysis to calculate out the real value of attending college, perhaps in the first place. You know, one of the tips that we say in the book is if you do choose to go to college, certainly be smart and, like anything, research your decision. You certainly want to look at things like expected salaries relative to your particular field of study, and then compare that to what you might wind up borrowing and that future income to make sure that you're not going to be owing an excessive payment and not have the income to cover it. So certainly want to kind of do that analysis. One of the other ways, of course, to help prepare for these rising college costs is to try and prepare for what those costs might be at an early possible stage as possible in order to reduce that financial stress. Certainly, as with any purchase, if you've been listening to our chapter videos, then you know that we always kind of come back to using a budget to give you a realistic idea of what things are going to cost ultimately over the course of time. You can certainly do that when it comes to college as well. The reality is that in order to get through college, most people wind up borrowing money, which unfortunately is how those college costs can actually spiral out of control even more so. You see, most loans that you take, they start accruing interest immediately. So loans that you took out sort of in year one, by the time you get to year 4 or 5, if you're graduating, then you could owe 35% more on those loans than what you actually originally borrowed, because that interest has been accruing for that 4, maybe even 5-year period of time. And when we think about those interest rates on college loans, certainly in today's environment, which is a higher interest rate environment, that interest rate as well is also going up. So unfortunately, no wonder that the average student loan debt at graduation is nearly $30,000 for a public university and almost $55,000 for those who went to a private college. Obviously, to reduce the long-term impact of this debt on your finances, you have to plan as early as possible. The power of time and compounding works just as well when you're saving for college as it does when you're saving for retirement. So Chapter 15 of our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, describes in detail sort of the 4 primary savings vehicles available to help with educational costs. And choosing the right one or the right option for your child's education depends on a variety of factors. Each of these options certainly has some advantages and disadvantages that the book gets into much more detail. But fundamentally, you certainly want to understand the differences between these options in order to make the most informed decision possible. So option 1 is using a Uniform Transfers to Minors Act account, otherwise known as a UTMA. It's basically a custodial account that is established for minors to hold assets until they reach the age of majority. A UTMA account, once established, is in fact the legal property of the child, and you are not able to change the ownership after the fact. UTMAs don't really offer any particular tax savings for educational purposes, but as you take the money out, it would wind up being taxed at perhaps the child's income tax rate, which is more likely than not lower than the parents'. The drawback to these UTMA accounts is that once the minor reaches legal age, then they have complete control over the account and ultimately can use the funds for whatever and whenever they want. So certainly some limitations on the UTMA approach. Option 2 then discusses the Prepaid College Plan approach, which basically allows families to prepay future college costs at today's rates, effectively sort of locking in current prices and protecting against future inflation. These plans are typically sponsored by state government and designed for use at in-state public colleges and universities without any tax implications on their benefits when used for educational purposes. So these plans clearly favor sort of in-state public schools. Unfortunately, they don't guarantee acceptance or anything like that at a particular college or a university in order to be eligible for those plans. The third option is an educational IRA, also known as a Coverdell savings account, and that is a tax advantage investment account that is established, owned, and controlled by an adult that names the minor as a beneficiary. Funds in an educational savings account are available for varying education levels from private elementary up through graduate school, and the amount available then to use depends solely upon the investment results of that underlying account. Now, contributions are made with after-tax dollars. The earnings, though, grow tax deferred, and when used for qualified educational expenses, those withdrawals, those earnings wind up being tax-free. Now, the limitation on that is that the maximum contribution that you can make to an ESA, an educational savings account, is $2,000 per year, and there also are some income limits that prevent high-income earners from establishing these type of accounts in the first place, which then gets us to sort of the fourth option when it comes to saving for college, and that is those things known as a 529 college savings types of plans. Now, those are tax advantage, much like educational savings accounts, and ultimately are purely sort of investment vehicles whereby the account owner of a 529 savings plan is the legal owner of the account balance and always controls the distribution of the fund. The earnings grow on a tax-deferred basis, no tax deduction for making that contribution. Although in some states, individual states that have income taxes, you can sometimes find if you use the plan in that particular state that you wind up getting a state income tax deduction. The reality is that the earnings inside of a 529 grow on a tax-deferred basis, and when you use the money for qualified educational expenses, then that is all tax-free. If it's non-educational expenses, then it's subject to income taxes plus a 10% penalty on the portion that is the growth in excess of the original contribution. So certainly some tax implications you need to be aware of when these accounts are not used for educational purposes. Unlike an educational savings account, 529 college savings plans don't really have any income limits on the ability to set up contributions, and in fact have significantly higher maximum contribution limits, up to $85,000 in a single year over a 5-year period of time. So chapter 15 of our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, concludes with sort of a summary of these four options, right? A UTMA account is sort of the least favorable option if you're setting up something purely for college savings, since it doesn't really have any tax advantages with respect to the underlying growth or the original contribution. And ultimately, it does give complete control to the beneficiaries. Prepaid college plans, on the other hand, offer sort of a fixed known cost for those future college expenses, but those also have a variety of limitations on their usage, including sort of a favoritism, if you will, for in-state college institutions. Educational savings accounts certainly tax advantage in terms of that growth and have some degree of flexibility, but certainly those low contribution limits and income eligibility parameters really limit their effectiveness as a full college planning tool. So in our view at Nelson Financial Planning, 529 college savings plans are probably the broadest option. They give you the most amount of flexibility, great parental control over the funds, and certainly the most significant opportunity to offset that full range of college expenses, because the amount that's going to be in there is going to be solely based on the investment results and the balance. But then you can use that money for whatever expenses beyond just tuition or room and board that are related to and qualified educational expenses. So for more details on these 4 different options for saving for college, be sure to read Chapter 15 of our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents. You can get your free copy of our book by texting free copy to 407-791-0070. That's 407-791-0070. My name is Joel Garris, Certified Financial Planner and Certified Financial Fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, and author of the book Next Gen Dollars and Cents. Thanks for watching this video.